All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Scoot Smart Cycle Safe webinar. If you don't know me, my name is Melinda Von Steen, and I manage the Central Ohio Greenways program at MORPC. And in the background, we have our fantastic Greenways intern, Morgan Fuller, running the slides for us. So I'm glad to welcome you all to this kind of timely conversation about e-bikes and e-scooters. And I'm also glad that we had the foresight to make this a virtual webinar. So I hope that you all are staying safe and remaining cozy in your homes if that's an option. I know I am. So welcome everyone. We have a number of speakers lined up today. But over the last few months, many of you have reached out to me or others at MORPC and shared your concerns about the growing use of e-bikes and scooters, especially among our youth in your communities. You've also noticed higher speeds on trails and sidewalks. And like you, I'm trying to understand how we can safely welcome these new forms or new-ish forms of mobility into our communities. Beyond my role as a planner, I'm also an e-bike user and a parent. And I know I have my own questions and concerns. And I think that there's a way for infrastructure, regulation, enforcement, and education to all work together to keep our communities safe while supporting this fun and accessible transportation option. Today you'll hear from a variety of speakers from different places, different organizations, that will share what they're seeing and how they're responding to the rise of e-bikes and e-scooters in our communities. Together, we'll explore the safety trends, policy approaches, and some training opportunities, and other strategies to purchase appropriate electric mobility devices here in Central Ohio. Before I hand it over to this great lineup of speakers, I just want to briefly share a couple of data trends and data reporting challenges to set the stage and really illustrate this challenge that we're facing. The Ohio 1 crash report doesn't explicitly classify crashes involving e-bikes and e-scooters. And so as a result of that, a lot of the incidences, the crashes and injuries are kind of grouped into broad categories like bicycles or other vehicles or just some sort of non-specific label that makes these crashes difficult to identify and accurately analyze. Really beyond the challenges of the report themselves, we know that many of these incidences and crashes just go unreported altogether. And this is because many of the crashes are like single user events. So events not really involving a car or another vehicle. So, somebody lost control or hit a pothole or a curb or something like that. So many of those don't go reported. We also know that many of the incidences are increasingly involving our youth. Parents, aren't really thinking of filing a crash report. They're just taking their children directly to the emergency room or urgent care. So this means that many of the incidences are just not being reported in crash databases like OH1. But we do know that like emergency data and other sources are telling the story slightly differently. So data that you see on this slide is from the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System. This shows that fatal injuries are really on the rise. Here, kind of circled on these charts show that in 2017, we saw 5 fatalities associated with micromobility devices. And this is when these types of devices were just starting to emerge and we were starting to see Bird and other scooters pop up in our communities. But in 2023, we saw 117 fatalities across the country. So, that's a significant increase over the course of 7 years. And we also know that as at least 18% and as much as up to 31% of these fatalities were among our youth. So this is really troubling to see our young people dying with these mobility devices. Next slide. Yeah. So ED emissions data is capturing injuries that never make it into these police reports. So this is especially falls that don't involve a car or roadway vehicle. And it's really creating a mixed match in officially reported data and in actual injuries. So on the left, I'll break down these charts for you a little bit. On the left, you see the line in blue at the top. That is showing a significant increase in emergency visits related to micromobility devices from 2017 to 2023. And then on the right, the chart, you see those two circles. The first circle draws your attention to the percentage of our population that falls into an age category below 25. And then the second circle draws your attention to the percentage of micromobility injuries that fall into those age categories. So we're really seeing injuries among youth significantly outpacing other age ranges. And then you see that chart with a lot of light blue. Apparently hoverboards are quite terrifying for our children. So those are causing significant number of injuries. And with all of this, I recognize that I'm really only scratching the surface of these data challenges and the challenges with safety with these devices. But I think that you all kind of can recognize that there are real issues linking crash reports and ED data. We don't have time to dive into all the strategies that some regions and entities are doing to kind of try to bridge that data gap. But I will put a link in the chat here in a moment to a study that one of our planners and researchers extraordinaire, Sam Smith, found out of Cleveland. One of the key findings out of that report is just that only a fraction of bike ped crashes are being reported on our crash reports. So if you want some further reading, that'll be in there. Next slide, Morgan. And then the last thing that I'll leave you with before I hand it over to the other speakers is that I recently learned about this new trail count equipment that our preferred trail count equipment vendor recently released. This is a permanent device that can not only count, but it can differentiate between PEDs, bikes, and scooters and record speeds. And I've heard from many of you and also personally witnessed myself an increase in reckless speeds on our trails coming from e-bike and e-scooter users. I've even started to question whether or not some of our heavily used trails are safe for my kids to, go play around on their bikes. So I encourage you to consider this equipment within your community to help us gather data to demonstrate beyond these anecdotes that speed on trails is an issue. And if you'd like to be connected with our account equipment vendor, let me know and I'd be happy to make that connection for you. And then next slide, Morgan. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our panel of speakers. Johnny Robinson is up first to kick things off. I will say that I'll be kindly keeping time for the speakers in the background, and I may pop in to give them a 2-minute warning just to make sure each of our speakers has time to get through their content, and we have some time for Q&A at the end. But if each of the speakers could introduce themselves before they get started, that would be fantastic. All right, I'll hand it off to Johnny.
Great, thank you very much, Melinda, and I appreciate you guys putting this on. Especially at this time. I don't know if people are aware of what's been happening with the state of New Jersey when it's come to e-bike legislation and also e-moto legislation, but this is a very timely subject. I know a lot of your communities are trying to wrestle with some of these things, and so we're going to kind of go through here. I don't have very much time. I will say this, my name or number and email are at the end of this. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I am the president of Johnny Vela Bikes. We've been an independent bike dealer for 8 years now. And I'm also the executive board member of the National Bike Dealers Association. So we represent about 5,000 independent bike dealers across the country. And I also chair the Government Affairs Committee. So we're looking at e-bike laws, bicycling laws, things of that nature. Morgan, next slide, please. Typically, I think most of you are familiar with the three e-bike class system, class 1, 2, 3. Class 1 is basically working pedals, pedal assist, a 750 watt motor, and can't exceed 20 miles per hour. Class 2 is pretty much the same thing, except you can also add a throttle to that. And then class 3 is a 750 watt motor. It says or more, it's supposed to be just a 750 watt motor there, and it cannot exceed 28 miles per hour. Next slide. Now, I think many of you aren't aware that the US government only recognizes two classes, and that's class 1 and class 2, and they did that in 2022. The third class, which is up to 28 miles per hour, was actually developed by People for Bikes, which is a bike lobbying group for consumers, but they also manage the Bike Products Supplier Association, which is the bike manufacturers. So they created that third class, and that third class has been widely adopted by, I think it's up to, I think, 44 different states now. It might be 43 because I think New Jersey just turned that on, flipped that over and changed their own classes here. Speaking of New Jersey, by the way, they came down kind of a hammer approach to the whole e-bike and e-moto market, requiring registering the bike. No one under 15 can ride. You have to have proof of insurance that you're insured under it, have to wear a helmet, and a bunch of other rules. You also have to have a license for that as well. So that passed really quickly. It kind of caught the industry off guard, and so we're kind of backpedaling a little bit here. So one of the reasons why I'm here speaking to you today. In 2022, the NEDA came out, and we were the first group to recommend UL certification of batteries for these e-mobility units. To our 5,000 plus bike dealers. That then started the trend. New York City banned non-UL 2849 or 2271 batteries. The state of New York, I think, is considering it. California, I believe, has adopted it or considering making that a law as well. Again, over 40 states now have adopted this. California was the first to come up with the more strict battery standards as well. But what I want to show you here is 2026, kind of what we're faced with right now in the future. And that's a lot of states and local municipalities are looking to enact stricter laws, mainly around e-moto use on public trails and roads. The MBDA is actually right now in the process of sending an advisement to all our independent bike dealers, warning them of e-moto safety concerns. And then also understanding what their liabilities could be if they work, sell, or service these e-motos. And we're actually taking the stance of e-motos aren't part of the e-bike infrastructure. We don't think they should be on trails. We don't think our dealers should be selling them. And most of our dealers aren't. Most of these e-motos that you're seeing are coming across, people are buying on the internet. And the one thing I want to make sure of too is that people look at whenever you're going to be enacting any laws or changing policies on this, is that you keep in mind American with Disability Act's guidelines, allowing people to have access to your trails, roads, and sidewalks when making these laws. Oftentimes, that is overlooked. I've seen that overlooked here on our local mountain bike trails, and it kind of paints a target on some of these people that need e-bikes for ADA issues. My own father has MS. He's 84 and rides an e-bike, and he has to have that with a throttle. A lot of trails and things like that are restrictive about throttles. And so it kind of paints a target on your ADA recipients if you're not spelling out ADA guidelines when you're making these rules and policies. Next slide, please. Now, this is a traditional e-bike. This is a class 1 or 2. This is very popular. We sell it in our shop. A 500-watt motor goes up to 20 miles per hour. It's typically sold through bike dealers or the internet. Next slide. Now, this is an e-moto, and this is something our industry wants no part of. We think this belongs in the power sports industry. It should fall under the National Highway Transportation Safety Association or Administration. These we're typically seeing the engines are over 750 watts or more. Usually you're seeing around 2,000 to 6,500 watt motors. They exceed 28 miles per hour. Some are quoting 40 to 60 miles per hour. This one here, Happy Run, which is a real popular one with some of the teens, quotes up to 50 miles per hour. MBDA wants nothing to do with these. We're recommending our dealers don't sell these. And insurance carriers are exploring liability issues too. We do a e-bike safety committee where we have some insurance people on as well. And they are behind in what they're going to be doing as far as insuring e-motos and even potentially class 3, because technically the US government only recognizes class 1 and class 2. So some of them are going to be writing in their policies, they won't cover class 3. They're not going to cover e-motos. And then they're also looking at, similar to like an uninsured motorist line item or rider on your policy, potentially having a e-mobility rider on your policy where you'd be covered if you were injured or hurt by someone on an e-moto or an e-bike, for example. Next slide, please. Now, some of the challenges municipalities are facing, looking at policy and definition, confusion as to what an e-bike and e-moto are, and they are two completely different things. If you're still questioning what they are, please reach out to me. Be happy to go through it more for you. The industry is slowly trying to term those bikes that are going 40, 50 miles per hour as e-motos. We don't want to consider them e-bikes, and we don't want to address them at all. They are not part of what we feel are cycling or responsible cycling, and again, belong in the power sports industry. And then making policies that don't punish bicyclists and e-bicyclists. I'm seeing some things happening in our state and even in our local communities here where cyclists and even e-bicyclists are getting punished for some of the bad behavior that these e-motos are causing. There's also some jurisdictional conflicts, conflicting laws different than what the state of Ohio has in your local communities. And then laws with neighboring municipalities and trails that run through both municipalities. The Olentangy Trail's right next to my shop. In Columbus, the speed limit's 15. Once you hit Worthington, it's 20. And actually, that is the more twisty, windy trail. Bexley has a helmet law that all adults must wear a helmet, yet they have trails that run south and go north of their community. And people riding those may not realize they're breaking the law when they're riding into Bexley without a helmet on. So looking at what you're looking to do in your municipalities could be affected if you have trails running through multiple communities as well. Next slide, please. Safety. Often e-motor riders are uninsured. They're often underage, and they don't wear a helmet or a full face helmet. There's insurance issues regarding these, whether or not they're going to cover them or not. And then a lot of times these are spec'd and manufactured using traditional bike products, traditional disc brakes for, a normal bicycle, not a vehicle that is going 50 miles per hour. They're just not designed for that. And you see these manufacturers doing this all the time. So they're not safe from a manufacturing design standpoint as well. The public's often confused with these as well. They can become injured in an e-moto accident. They can have a hard time identifying the assailant. There's no license, they don't have insurance, or the assailant leaves. And often lumps illegal e-motos into the e-bike classification. They think they're all one thing, and that's not the case at all. And that's what we're really trying to stress here with that. Next slide. Insurance companies, I mentioned before, they're still confused. They're still kind of feeling things out about how things are working here. Right now, their focus has been more about e-bike battery liability, and that's taken a number of years. So I see this still kind of unfolding e-bike, e-moto with the insurance industry over the next 2 to 3 years. And then parents too. They're often not they're not aware of what they're buying is illegal oftentimes. A lot of these e-moto websites will have a disclaimer, check your local laws, or they might say it's for off-road only, but the parents aren't seeing that because Johnny's friend Billy got a happy run and, you know, Johnny wants to go just as fast as Billy does. And so I often hear, well, that this is what my kids' friends are getting. They're not related to the safety issues regarding these high speeds. These braking systems on a lot of these e-motos just are not designed to be handling 50 miles per hour. And then parents often aren't having kids wear the right helmets. There's scooters, e-scooters out there that are going 40, 50 miles per hour. There are e-motos that are going those speeds, and those kids need full face helmets if they're riding those. Next slide. Enforcement's also an issue amongst your municipalities. Reporting of bicycling, e-biking, and e-moto riding incidents, accidents. That was just talked about a few minutes ago with Melinda too, as far as reporting the accidents. You know, there's laws here in Columbus where if you're a cyclist or an e-bicyclist and you have an injury with a car, for example, if the police will not come unless EMS is sent on location. So you can't even get a police to come out and take a report unless you're injured enough, or you think you might be injured enough. Who knows if you have a head injury, whether or not to call EMS or not. And then having police understand really what illegal moto brands are to identify and enforce. There's a number of popular ones that are real easy to identify. School and public safety, school enforcement's a big one. A lot of these kids, parents are telling me these kids are riding their bikes to school and to practice and things like that. What happens if someone on the school grounds gets injured by someone on an illegal e-moto? Is your school's insurance policy going to even cover that? It's an illegal, not street legal piece of equipment, and you've allowed it on your property because they've been parking it there and riding it to school. So looking at that, liability insurance, making sure that you're covered for these different types of classes. And then knowledge and policy gaps. Police, I've seen typically are not enforcing e-moto. My fiance has a 20-year-old son that bought a Suron and rides it around the community he lives in. He said police follow behind him. He has no license on this, and it goes 50 miles per hour, and he's riding on the city streets. So not enforcing them just allows the problem to exacerbate, and then everyone gets bundled into these e-moto issues as well, whether it be cyclists or responsible e-bike users. City councils need to understand more about the laws and the classes that they're looking at enforcing some of these new rules. I know one city council recently just enacted a rule where you can't go more than 10 miles per hour on the trail with one. Does that mean that what we call acoustic bikes or normal bikes have to only go 10 miles per hour as well? Or can they go 15 while an e-bike can only go 10? Looking at some of those laws too just doesn't kind of make sense. Another big one that I see a lot of is people enact a law that say adults can't ride on the sidewalk. Number one, look into ADA responsibilities there. You might have a legal exposure there. But in the same report too, they say kids can ride on sidewalks, but adults can't. So if I'm a father and I have a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old, are you telling me that they have to ride on the sidewalk and I have to ride on the street? It doesn't make sense. So really looking at reaching out to experts that ride these trails, understand the local laws, and working with them to put together something that makes sense. Next slide, please. This is a great one. This came from the Troy Police Department, where you can ride, and they have all these different type of vehicles and where you can ride them. I haven't seen anything like this before. I thought that was great, so I wanted to share that with you. Um, Police and schools should be educating parents on what the municipality's laws are. Schools should be banning e-motos from their property, and that includes doing bike rack checks during school hours, at school events, sporting events, things like that. Making sure that those people that are riding on their property are riding legal bikes or e-bikes. Provide buyer guides, copies of laws, or suggest they talk to the local bike shop for guidance on what is legal in their areas. Our shop has created 2 different buyer guides, how to buy an e-bike and then a parent's guide to buy an e-bike for your child. You can go to our website, johnnyvelobikes.com, and download those. Next slide, please. City councils need to enact laws that mirror shared streets or trails in their adjacent municipalities as well, so that, again, there's no riding on sidewalks in Columbus, Ohio for adults, yet some of the bike trails spill you right out onto the sidewalks. So looking at what your current infrastructure is, making sure the laws, are address some of the city planning issues that you may be facing. City council needs to reach out to experts in the field. Post better signage on these trails. Often these trails at some of the major entrances to these have no signage whatsoever. So it's confusing to people as what they can ride or what they can't ride on these trails. Include the speed limits, include signs banning e-motos. I think that's a great way to start. And then also municipalities really need to look into their insurance coverage and make sure that they're going to be covered under these 3-class systems. Next slide. Again, this is examples of 2 of our buying guides here. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm here to help. From a local standpoint, also from a national, with the National Bike Dealers Association, I can put you in touch with people, experts in our field if you need that as well. And there's my number and email if you have any additional questions.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate the knowledge that you brought and sharing your perspective as someone who's interacting with people who are purchasing this equipment and is really connecting with everyday people. So I'm excited to hear from some of the municipalities on ways that they're starting to address a lot of the concerns that you brought up. So next up, we have Christian from City of Columbus.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I thought I was second. No trouble at all, though. So my name's Christian Sims. I work for the City of Columbus Department of Public Service, and I'm on the mobility and planning team here at the city. So just a quick kind of overview from the city perspective. One note, I will be sharing a lot about shared micromobility as I'm the program manager here at the city. But something about me, I am an e-bike owner. Just for context, I try to walk the walk as much as possible with this type of work. And I'm also on the Bike Plus team, which I'm sure a lot of the folks on this call are familiar with that plan. So it is in the Bike Plus plan to, kind of address code that maybe need change. So one example that we've actually done so far is in being able to enforce, loading and parking activity when cars are parking in bike lanes, for example. So that's one accomplishment we've made kind of through public feedback through that Bike Plus plan. But we at Public Service, we are, our number one goal is providing safe infrastructure for really any mode in as quickly as we can. So we see that as the biggest impact we can do to affect change in terms of road safety for this type of work. So safety for all is our main priority, and we think policy changes, which I know other folks will probably be touching on, can kind of work in tandem with that, with kind of an infrastructure first mentality. Next slide, please. So like I said, I'm the micromobility, the shared mobility program manager here at the city. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is kind of that and what we're doing to provide safe from a pedestrian perspective, but also for riders as well. So here on the left, if you want to go, yep. We've got, it's just kind of a rubric of service level agreements. It's just a snapshot. We've got 28 of those. And those, I personally go through every month with each vendor. So that's VO and Spin. Some of them are safety related. Some of them are, for example, reporting times for how quickly they're getting to through on ones. A lot of those through on ones are, this scooter or this bike is blocking the sidewalk, and the vendors have an hour to respond to those. So less kind of about the the content in which Johnny from Velo Bikes was discussing, but certainly safety all the same. And then also some other safety specific ones. They are the vendors themselves have to report out unique touch points that they have with every vehicle. In our market, and this would include Ohio State, roughly 4,000 devices that you see kind of on the right, those bikes and scooters. And they have to report out every month how often they're touching these devices and what they're doing. If it's a brake check, if they're checking, the bar alignment or anything like that. So they have to report that. This is thousands of touches a month. And then also if a vehicle it has an issue in the field, they have to have the ability to virtually shut it down so a rider can't use it in the future if it was reported. And then also they have to, if there is a vehicle shut down, they have to report how quickly they can actually get it from the field and take it to their shop to work on it. So a couple of service level agreements that both VO and Spin have agreed to, and if they are not reporting compliance, there is a monetary fine that is associated with not doing these actions. So it's not just about reporting that you're doing it, but also if you aren't doing it, there's an incentive to get this work done. I think that was it. We don't have any service level agreement in terms of sidewalk riding, but that is something that we're aware of. Not just the parking of devices on sidewalks, but also the riding on sidewalks. We're working with both Spin and VO this upcoming year. They both have discussed some potentially technology solutions that they have that will be able to help solve that problem. Next slide, please. And just quickly here, just two images of, these are pictures I took in the field during staff audits. Just really want to call the difference of, for one, there on the left, you can see that you're not really going to be able to access the sidewalk. It certainly would be an ADA compliance to be able to use this. Also, just calling attention to the different device types. There on the right, you see kind of more like a bike style, kind of more like a moped. type device, and then the left kind of the smaller wheels. So calling attention that I would recommend, if you're going to be using these devices, choose what's comfortable for you. There on the left, you may not be comfortable with the size of the wheels, but certainly, a lot of college students are using these devices. Andrew, I'm sure from Ohio State, may be able to call attention to that. And then on the right, bigger wheels, more like a bike-friendly type. We at the city, our goal is to just provide as many, as many devices as we can for folks to use, and if they're comfortable or not. So next slide, please. And this too is really just kind of a guide from both vendors, kind of how this is what they would present to the general public. Most of it's pretty intuitive. I'm sure a lot of the folks on this call know. Pre-inspect your vehicle, make sure it does feel safe before you hop on. If you're new to it, there on the spin one, it says slow your roll. You can always take it slow. You don't have to, they're throttled at 15. You can't go higher than 15 on each device. Obviously ride sober, wear a helmet, obey local traffic rules. But just sharing that, this safety is a very legitimate, we are talking about safety often with the vendors, and promoting that as much as possible. We even ask every month, even if you're a regular user, to, when you log into the app, have safety features pop up to remind folks to be aware of their surroundings and things of that nature. Next slide, please. And then lastly, this is just the image on the left is kind of a work order, if you will, for this is actually installed in the short north. It's a scooter corral. There on the right is kind of what that would look like in practice, but really providing dedicated space for these devices to be parked. And also creating a level of reliability for folks to be able to end their ride. This also creates the space, as you can see on the image on the right, to the left there on the sidewalk. Although it looks a little scattered, there's a lot of devices kind of all over. We would consider this to be success. It may not, from like the pedestrian perspective, you may not think that looks pretty, but it's not blocking the sidewalk. These are non-staged. These are all parked by users. So we would consider on the right to be a success, but creating a little bit more order and dedicated space is one of our primary goals, especially for this 2026 season. And then back to the image on the left, we did recently complete, with the help of our traffic team, we introduced, I believe, 19 scooter corrals in the short north along High Street. I think there's only a couple on High Street. Most of them are below the curb and off kind of on the side streets, as the image dictates. On Russell Street there below the curb, kind of in that no stopping anytime area that is kind of, quote, a little bit of a dead space. And I think that's all I have. Next slide. Yeah, just my contact information. If there's any questions, I know there's a couple of colleagues on this call from the Department of Public Service. If there's any questions that folks may have towards the end, we can potentially co-work and answer some of those questions as best we can.
Thanks so much, Christian. Really appreciate you sharing the work that you do at City of Columbus and filling us in on micromobility strategies. Next up, I'm going to hand things off to Kate Harley with ODOT to talk from a statewide perspective.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm Kate. I'm our active transportation manager here at ODOT in our Office of Highway Safety. And I just am going to provide a brief overview of what kind of e-bike law looks like at the state level, and share a couple resources that ODOT has available in case you find them useful. So next slide, sort of repeating some information here from earlier, but just in general, this is how the state of Ohio defines the three classes of e-bikes. I think, most notably, these classes have a lot in common. They have to have pedals. They have to be less than a 750 watt engine. But differences kind of come up when it comes to being able to receive assistance from the bike. So class 1s and 3s, you have to pedal in order to get assistance. Class 2, you actually don't have to pedal to get assistance. So there's the possibility of like throttling without pedaling to propel yourself forward. And then related to speed, this is really notable, and I think often what I focus on when I am understanding the difference between these classes. Class 1 and 2 e-bikes don't give you assistance beyond 20 miles per hour. So you would only be traveling faster than 20 miles per hour if you were able to physically propel the bike that fast. Whereas a class 3 e-bike can help assist you up to 28 miles per hour. So notably faster when we get to a class 3 e-bike. Next slide, just a few other quick bullet points that, kind of come along with the class 3 e-bike. In Ohio, these bikes have to have a speedometer. You have to be 16 or older to ride them. And regardless of your age, you are required to wear a helmet. Next slide. Just a kind of quick overview of the where to ride laws. All e-bikes, same as bikes, can travel on roads within Ohio. Bikes are vehicles in the state of Ohio, so all public roadways are open to bicycle travel except freeways. E-bikes should not be ridden on paths that are primarily designed for hiking or equestrian use, mountain biking, or on any natural surface. It is notable that the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has specific guidance for these types of trails within state parks. So ODNR owned trails have their own specific guidance. And I believe that they've actually expanded and allowed the use of class 1 e-bikes on some of their trails. And then under state law, this is kind of a departure from most like city laws, but under state law, people are allowed to ride bikes or e-bikes if the motor is not engaged on the sidewalk. But obviously a lot of our local municipalities don't allow adults to ride their bikes on the sidewalk. Next slide. And then again, just in terms of where to ride, class 1 and 2 e-bikes are generally, they're permitted where other bicycles are permitted. So you can ride these on the road, you can ride these in bike lanes, you can ride these inside like paths right along the road, and you can ride these on like paved trails out, not adjacent to the road. So other, maybe more like recreational trails. Class 1 and 2 e-bikes are generally allowed on these types of facilities and trails, unless there is like another local prohibition in place. However, when it comes to class 3 e-bikes, those are not permitted on those like shared use paths or like paved trails that are not adjacent to a roadway. So again, statewide law, these class 3 e-bikes, they can be on the road, they can be in bike lanes. They even could be on those paths right along and adjacent to a roadway. But once we get to more of that kind of trails outside of the roadway, that's where they are not permitted. So a couple resources that you might want to check out. We've published a bicycle, pedestrian, and micromobility law guide. This is just a helpful like reference material for people working in this space. It helps to really summarize state traffic law that relates to like non-motorized users and how they interact on our roadways. So that's something to check out if you're just looking for kind of a summary of everything that impacts walking and biking from kind of a legal perspective. And then on the next slide, we've also developed out a more robust webpage for e-bike related resources specifically. So going a little bit more in depth in terms of state laws and definitions and requirements and where to ride laws. And we've also posted here a few materials that you might be interested in downloading. So there's 2 social media posts and there's 2 tip cards. These might be useful to you if you're just trying to like get information out to your network or your community. You could print these types of tip cards and, give them to some of your local bike shops or other point of sale places, or law enforcement partners could give these out as they are engaging with people traveling. So over the next 2 slides, I just have a couple images, and thanks to my colleague Renee, she's also posting a direct link in the chat. So I'll wrap up with this slide. Melinda, we can skip the other 2, but I mean, just in general, ODOT is a resource for transportation related materials. Sorry, 1 slide up in terms of ODOT. Oh, yeah. Just when it comes to general bicycle related resources, our agency provides some really flagship resources in terms of design through our multimodal design guide. We provide a lot of funding to local governments for bicycle infrastructure specifically, particularly through our highway safety program, our transportation alternatives program, and our Safe Routes to School program. And then our active transportation webpage just has a lot of other technical assistance or a lot of other information related to planning, technical assistance, data, education, and promotion. So you can check that out for more information. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Really appreciate that information, and the tip cards are fantastic. So thanks for that resource. Next up, we have Andrew Neal from OSU, who will be able to share a little bit of information from that younger age group that we were talking about before. And we all know that there's a large concentration of micromobility devices on campus. So over to you, Andrew.
There we go. Thank you so much. It's great to be here today. So I'm going to run through a number of slides. So Morgan, I'm going to keep you on your toes with my next. So I'm Andrew Neal, Assistant Director for Sustainability in our Facilities Operations and Development team. Our team works across the university on all things kind of sustainability and operations, and that includes active transportation. So if we can go to the next slide. I'm going to give you more of a general overview of sort of how Ohio State promotes e-bike and e-scooter safety, as well as safety for all other users of our roadways and sidewalks and paths. So we really think about this in 3 steps. It's understand the data, then implementing actions, and finally telling the story. And this is sort of a do it again or repeat, rinse and repeat. So we learn from our actions and our storytelling. We try to implement new things, and then we go back and tell the story again. Next slide. So that first step is to understand the data. So what do we have and what do we need? Here is a big general overview, a quick level setting of Ohio State for folks that might not be super familiar. I'm sure you all are, but the university district where we sit is highly populated, very densely populated. We've got over 60,000 students, 50,000 employees, 120,000 ER visits every year. And in the fall, over 300,000 people are coming to our campus for a little sport that some of you may have heard of, Go Bucks. And of course, the majority of our population is young. And I love this stat or fact from ODOT at the bottom here. You know, young people have a fairly high risk of crashes, injuries, or death. So with all of those users and all of this action happening on campus, there's a lot of potential for safety conflicts. Next slide. We also know that a lot of people do commute to campus by bike, scooter, and foot. So we administer a survey every year through my team, every 2 years to get a gauge on this. And it's a sample survey, so it's representative. It's how the typical person gets to campus every week. And this is from 2024, but the key takeaway here is about 20% of the people are biking or walking to campus. With the numbers that you saw on the previous slide, that could potentially a lot of people. And we expect this number to grow as our streets get safer, electric devices do get more popular, and the city continues to densify. So we'll be doing this survey again this spring, and we're really interested in actually adding some questions about how that 3% bike number, how many of those people are using e-bikes or scooters. Hopefully this will help us to understand how that group is growing over time. And I did want to point out that overall commuting makes up about 7% of our annual carbon footprint. This is primarily through that bottom part of the slide there, the single occupancy vehicles. And if this number can be reduced if folks choose a different option to get to campus. So how do we make it safer for them and more accessible? Next slide. What we do know about e-bike and e-scooter usage is from our ride report software. So this is an agreement with the City of Columbus's shared mobility provider, and we have our own agreement with them as well. Again, you would expect we see a lot of usage of shared mobility devices. So over 645,000 trips that started or ended on campus this past year. We also use this platform to monitor restricted riding and parking zones on campus. So it's a little bit of a strain on your eyes, but those red boxes are areas where parking is restricted on campus, such as the Oval and other locations that we see a lot of foot traffic. And this is managed through our traffic and transportation and management team. And this is a fairly steady number. We see these types of rides every year. Next slide. We also have a lot of bike infrastructure on campus. So, we know how people are getting to campus. Where are they going? This is a map of our bike racks across campus. We have over 9,000, and we do annual inspections on those to make sure that they're all safe and accessible to people. And this is typically where we want e-bikes and e-scooters to park, adjacent to those racks. In reality, as Christian pointed out, that doesn't happen all the time. So this is an area that we're closely looking at and, trying to see, are we providing the right types of infrastructure as people change from a normal bike to an e-bike or are riding scooters? Do we need more secure or covered parking, as some of these newer bikes are more expensive? Do we need charging stations? And also, as Christian mentioned, do we need corrals for scooters maybe? Next slide. So lots of data, and I think it paints the picture that there are a lot of people on bikes and scooters, a lot of people walking to campus, a lot of vehicles, a lot of buses, just a lot of potential safety issues. So we also have some data gaps. As Melinda noted early on, we're working on better understanding our crash and incident data on our campus. We know a lot of things happen that aren't reported, so more to come on that. But what do we do to try to implement some actions to help safety? One of the biggest ways has been the creation of our active transportation working group. So this is a group of faculty, staff, students, community members that meets monthly and discusses active transportation issues. This ensures we have a time and a place to talk about concerns and solutions, and we get to hear from many different perspectives. We hear a lot of safety concerns from this group, and as an administrative and operational staff, we're able to listen to those and then try to figure out some real-world solutions. It doesn't always come to fruition, or it may take a long time, but this has been a great mechanism for us to work with a broad group of interested individuals on a continuing basis and begin some meaningful work. Next slide. So one thing that group really helps with is our Bike to Campus event. This is an event we held in September of every year at our Buckeye Bike Hub, which is a student-operated bike shop on campus through our Student Life Rec Sports Department. And this is an opportunity to engage with the community again and promote safety. We offer vendor tables, bike safety checks, giveaways, and discounted labor rates. But most of all, it's an outreach and engagement event. We're able to mingle with students and staff, promote our programs, and listen to their feedback. Our police department is always there, sometimes on their bikes with their bike unit, and it's a good visual for the community to see that safety and cycling go hand in hand. And for the past couple of years, we've had a big paper map that we put out at this event, and folks are able to mark it up with their safety concerns and their experiences on campus. Our planning team takes that back and tries to incorporate that into the planning efforts of the university. Next slide. And when we're promoting safety, we're really always pointing back to our website, which is our Share the Road and Rules of the Road web pages. Having this strong web presence is essential for us to promote safe behaviors, and it makes it extremely easy for us to share this information with our community. There's nothing groundbreaking here. It's just best practices and safety tips, and sometimes just referring to the City of Columbus's rules, laws, and regulations. But it's extremely important to continue to share these and have a reliable source to point back to. Next slide. We also highlight parking guidelines for scooters through the web pages, and we provide resources for users to report concerns. This is a big issue for us sometimes. So with devices blocking sidewalks or ADA access areas. So this is an area where we have to continually remind folks about the rules and look for other solutions as well. And we also provide a service to facilities link on here where folks can report issues and get automatically routed to our TTM staff for review. Next slide. We just started this program this past year to register your bike and scooter. So theft is also a safety concern for us on our campus, and our Department of Public Safety has created this website and tracking form to increase the odds that a stolen bike or scooter could be recovered. This launched this past year, and we already have about 70 folks registered, so we expect this to continue to grow. Next slide. One more way that we try to benchmark ourselves and learn best practices is through the League of American Bicyclists Bicycle Friendly University certification. So we're silver certified in this, and I wanted to mention it because the league has some really great e-bike safety resources on their website. And additionally, one of our transportation planners in our TTM has been on a cohort this past year organized by the league and Underwriters Labs to create some guidelines around charging of e-bikes and e-scooters. And for us, as we manage dorms and buildings, we really want to minimize any risks associated with charging. So some information on that should be coming out this next year. And if anyone's interested, they can reach out to me and I can get you in touch with our planner. And finally, next slide on this section, we're excited that we're moving forward with a Safe Streets for All grant through the U.S. Department of Transportation. We were awarded $300,000 this past year to create a comprehensive multimodal safety plan. And we just published an RFP this month to hire a consultant to help us with this. So we really see this as a way to get a grasp and handle on e-bike and e-scooter and micromobility devices in mind. So more to come on that as well. Next slide. And I'm just going to finish up quickly with how we tell the story. Again, this is really important for us as we have a really transient population of new students coming in every year. So first and foremost, we work with our communications teams to put out a number of articles and newsletters about safety each year. And we recycle these almost on each semester. Typically, these aligns with the start of a semester or different times of the year where folks are changing in their jobs. These are on our websites, but they're also published through emails and newsletters. So we cast a wide net, and it takes continual effort to push this information out. And then also we are using social media. We'll put the link for this in the chat. If anyone has a chance, I really recommend just checking it out. As we do have a young population, as you mentioned, we try to reach them on platforms that they like and make some funny videos. And it's always good if we can get Brutus on a bike or scooter as well. So this is from our OSU PD, and they did a great job with this, and it got a lot of hits online. So that's all I got for you today. I hope it's helpful, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Andrew. This is fantastic. Amazing job keeping time and getting through all of that information. Impressive work. Next, we'll hand things over to JM with the City of Dublin, where perhaps he might touch on another category of youth. I know that a lot of our suburban communities have been calling me related to some of our preteens and teenagers enjoying some freedom on micromobility devices. So really excited to hear what you have in the works, JM.
Thanks, Melinda. Yes, this is very timely. We are have had a pilot for the past couple of years, and we can go to the next slide and I can show you that information. But most recently, Council extended that pilot until June 1st of this year. During our last check-in with Council, they asked us to think about safety, think about responsibilities of the users, other people on the roadway, whether it be motorists or just, it could be parents, as you mentioned, some of the younger groups of riders out and about in our community. And just provide some standards so we can set expectations and have predictable behavior on our shared use paths, sidewalks, and other facilities. So the pilot is planning to conclude this spring. We introduced the micromobility code update to Council actually last Tuesday on the 20th to get some of their initial feedback, and then we'll be hopefully going back to them at the end of February for the first reading of our ordinance, and then hopefully adoption in March. So that is the plan. Next slide. We've touched on this a little bit already, but for this webinar, it's probably good to know that Dublin allows Class 1 and Class 2 bikes on our shared use paths, our sidewalks, bike lanes, things of that nature. Class 3, though, are not permitted on our shared use paths and sidewalks, and they are required to ride in the roadway with a helmet, as Kate and I think Christian and some other people already mentioned some of the regulations. Next slide. Also mentioned, we talk about e-motos, or we call mini motorcycles or toy motorcycles. These are covered under existing code, but we probably will do a little bit of beefing up for our updates to the code, but they're prohibited on roadways. We consider them all-purpose vehicles. And so there are exceptions for transporting like the vehicle from your car to wherever you're designated to operate, which in this case would be basically on private property and nowhere on public property. The next slide. As Christian mentioned, and Ohio State, we are engaged with VO as our sole operator in Dublin. With our code updates, we hope to provide a little bit more definition in terms of the vehicles and in some of the operator requirements, parking expectations. So in Dublin, please park it at a bike rack or the designated area. And then some other guidance for our fleet operators. Next slide. Thinking about e-bikes and traditional bikes and other micromobility devices, we are looking to make sure that our definitions are up to date. Operation of Class 1 and Class 2 may continue to use the roadway, sidewalk, shared use paths, but Class 3 will also be prohibited moving forward on our shared use paths and our sidewalks. Traditional skateboards and rollerblades may operate on sidewalks and shared use paths, but not on the roadways. And then motorized bicycles and mopeds may operate on roads if licensed and registered, but are prohibited on sidewalks and shared use paths. Currently, helmets are required for all operators under 18 years old, with Class 3 e-bikes already required to wear them under state law. We did have some interesting conversation. Our council was not too excited about a mandate for helmets, so we'll have to continue to explore that and see if that is the ultimate direction they want to head in. But we were trying to align with what other communities are doing as best as we can. The next slide. Thinking about specifically targeting or focusing on miniature motorcycles, thinking about the operation, we don't really have anything that speaks to parent accountability, which we found in other communities in Ohio, which we kind of liked. But we probably will add some language that speaks to some of the responsibilities of parents if they're going to purchase these vehicles. And then thinking about enforcement measures. Again, not trying to be punitive here, but trying to put something in our code that speaks to what we're hoping to get as outcomes. Next slide. Some additional considerations as we presented this update to council was, do we want to allow mini motorcycles in parks? Is there maybe one park that this should be set aside for? Maybe that's a horrible idea altogether, thinking about other users in parks or what have you. We want to continue to coordinate with our regional partners. We border Columbus, we border Hilliard, and we also have, adjacency to townships and PAL. So thinking about how we can get to and from Dublin with our adjacent municipalities. And then I'll touch on community survey results, which we had in December. So next slide. Reached out to many of you on this call, thinking about how we can benchmark what other communities are doing throughout the lay of the land. So we put this chart together, and apologies if there's any typos, but we took everything that we gathered from these questionnaires that we sent to other communities and began to kind of see, all right, where do we fall along things and where does everyone else kind of shake out in the region? So this is really great for benchmarking. Again, probably valuable to many people on this call just to see what other communities are doing. But overall, the proposed code that we are putting forward aligns with what peer cities are doing in terms of safety and operation standards. So we find this valuable moving forward, and it combines the best practices. So I think that's something that we take into account as we're looking to craft the final micromobility code. We can go to the next slide. So we did do surveys in December. We had a survey that was speaking specifically to proposed code amendments for micromobility. And that was online from December 12th to the 28th. We received over 300 responses from the community. And the survey results indicate that most respondents are very or somewhat familiar with micromobility devices. So that was encouraging, at least to know there's awareness. There's strong overall support for enhanced safety measures, particularly for clearer rules and targeted restrictions. Over 86% of people support that in the survey. Youth safety emerged as a key priority for our community. So thinking about the helmet requirement, if that's ultimately where we want to go, thinking about holding parents or guardians accountable when they are knowingly letting their kids ride unsafely on certain vehicles. And then respondents overwhelmingly supported maintaining an existing ban on mini motorcycles, with over 93% of people stating support for that. So I think, again, the survey results indicate broad support for revising the city's micromobility code and regulations to improve safety and clarity for all users. Next slide. So education is going to be really important. Again, we're not trying to be punitive from our approach, but we're trying to make sure everyone meets our expectations in terms of safety and honestly etiquette on the shared use path system and sidewalks. So as part of this broader initiative, we're developing a strategy that will help clearly communicate what the expectations are from a safety and legal aspect of operation of micromobility devices and other similar devices that fall into that category. And again, the goal is promoting informed and responsible use of these devices, knowing that their speed and making sure everyone can expect them on the shared use pass system. We'll probably combine social media, flyers, digital and print. We do pop-up meetings every summer, as we call it the mobility concierge. So there's a lot of touch points with the community to make sure that they're aware of where the city is going in terms of regulations and also safety for everyone that uses our shared use pass system. And then continuing on, we created this matrix to help with the code update. So everything that you see, the matrix visually indicates which devices are subject to these code updates and certain regulations and certain restrictions that apply to the types of vehicles. I know this isn't very easy to see, but we can obviously share this out. But the yellow cells on this slide highlight the changes from existing code. So you'll begin to see that we are trying to make some changes, again, for safety and for clarity. Next slide, we did put together a draft active transportation safety guide, and you can kind of see it on the right, but the table of contents, we cover a variety of different angles of micromobility, including golf carts, addressing those as part of the conversation. But this is meant to supplement the matrices that we put together of the existing and proposed code. And then also, this is meant to be kind of an easy, guidance, thinking of what Kate put forward with the state level information. I think this is a nice supplement as well at the local level that's particular to Dublin. But it's really meant to raise awareness of what our local ordinances are and how to promote safe and consistent, travel across sidewalks, shared use paths, trails, and streets. So this will hopefully be, again, a guide to help reduce confusion and advance some of our safety goals. Finally, for what we went to council last week. They gave us some great feedback. We'll continue to incorporate that and refine the education plan as part of our overall efforts. But we do plan to come back hopefully the end of February for the first reading of the code update, the ordinance. And then in March, get the second reading, and hopefully that will conclude our micromobility pilot and continue to share what we've learned from our experience. Thank you.
Thanks, JM. Appreciate all of the leadership that Dublin is involved in and being forward thinking about safety and accessibility for these devices. Next up, our last speaker, Mayor Kessler from Bexley, will be sharing a little bit about what they're doing to address all of this in their community. And as we all know, Mayor Kessler is always a leader in sustainability and micromobility. So I'm sure he has a lot of really thoughtful ideas to share with us. While he's speaking, feel free to go ahead and gather your thoughts, pop any questions that you might have for any of the speakers today in the chat. We should have a few minutes for Q&A at the end. All right, over to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Melinda. This has been a passion project of mine, partially because I have a 14-year-old eighth grader who is a gearhead and loves anything that moves, and especially things that move quickly. And so our focus in Bexley has really focused a lot on the youth in our city and the sort of behavior that we've seen. Partially, I think we've seen a maybe a little bit sooner than some other communities because we're a 2.5 square mile community with a pretty dense single family residential population. So a lot of kids in a small area, and we have a variety of middle school, what we call biker gangs that operate throughout the city, zipping around on e-bikes of various sorts, including e-motos. And we've just seen a lot of really erratic, unpredictable, dangerous behavior. Drivers are alarmed, everything that we've talked about. And so we put together a regulatory framework that was designed to kind of layer on top of the state of Ohio's law. And next slide would be good at this point. I mean, one thing that was kind of alluded to by our first speaker from Johnny Velo Bikes, which, by the way, amazing presentation, is this sort of peer pressure element of this, which is we're seeing more and more kids like to see e-bikes, they want their own e-bikes. And we really wanted to get ahead of the curve because we were seeing a surplus of e-motos getting purchased, which are illegal and under like any any sort of definition. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't in a situation where all of these families had invested in this equipment that was not legal and that we hadn't been doing a good job of enforcing. And so one of the things that our police department brought back to us as we talked about enhanced enforcement just with Ohio's basic law is just a feeling like it wasn't clear enough, that there wasn't enough education out in the community. And we saw this ordinance as a way to kind of also put forward a really clear presentation to the community so we could start to have better enforcement. So the first thing we did was last summer, we held multiple parent workshops. There's at least one parent that from the workshops on this that's participated in the panel. And we heard a variety of perspectives, but mostly a lot of confirmation of what we were concerned with the behavior that we were seeing. We introduced our ordinance in October, passed it in November. Actually did not have any opposition to the ordinance from any of the speakers at our council, if I recall correctly. And then we wanted to get the ordinance in place by the holiday gift buying period so we could really get the information out to the community. And then with the expectation that we're going to be launching a curriculum here in the next month or two. And I'm going to talk now about what that is. And that's the next slide. So this ordinance does layer on top of Ohio's existing e-bike laws. It requires training requirements for juveniles. So kids under the age of 16 riding e-bikes are required to have gone through a class. And the class is going to be less than an hour. It's going to be presented by a police officer to help kind of the kids understand the law and get their head around rules of the road. And this is really inspired when we looked at different, even like a class 2 e-bike and Ohio's law around mopeds. There's a lot of similarity functionally between a moped and a class 2 e-bike. The state has been really good at regulating that in the past. We felt like having a juvenile operating on the roadway, training would be really helpful to get them educated and in a good shape to be able to safely ride in the community. It also requires for those, and this is all youth only, that the e-bikes be certified. And what that means is that the city, agent of the city takes a look at the bike, verifies that it is a class 1 or 2 bike in accordance with the law, so that and then there'll be a sticker on that so that officers can quickly see that the youth riding those bikes are riding bikes that have been certified and ostensibly also would then have the training. There are age-based restrictions based on class, and we added a helmet requirement for class 1 and 2 e-bikes above and beyond what the state law requires for class 3. Next slide. So how does that all break down? Essentially, class 1 e-bikes, those are the pedal assist only, are not legal in Bexley under age 12. So 12 to 15, there would be education and registration requirements. There's a little bit of an asterisk here. Parents can waive the education requirement for class 1 e-bike, but they have to actively waive it. Class 2 e-bikes, ages 14 and 15, education and registration requirements. And then for class 3 e-bikes, Ohio law already does require that to be age 16 and only, so there's no additional requirement in Bexley. And we also added an age limitation on on e-scooters. Our sidewalks aren't really a safe place for e-scooters for a variety of reasons. And so we wanted to make sure that kids were at least old enough to understand some rules of the road. And so the age limit on e-scooters is 12 and older only. Obviously, state law already limits age for rentals of e-scooters, but we're seeing more and more ownership of e-scooters and wanted to add something there. If you could go to the next slide. So this is the copy of our holiday buying guide that went out. One thing I kind of mentioned real quickly, but didn't go into is there will be a little bit of a parent training requirement. Just the parent signing off on the student or the youth having an e-bike under age 16, that parent would be required to just review a little bit of the law and understand it. John had kind of mentioned how parents often don't know what they're buying, and we see that all the time. And so we think the first step is to really help parents understand the equipment that their kids are purchasing, what that equipment is capable of. And I think then the risk can be made much more clear. We intend to enforce this primarily through education. So we're not really into like hardcore enforcement with our youth. We are getting e-bikes for our department, so that officers can be on the same type of equipment that they're talking to kids about. And I think that overall, this is going to end up being a really positive interface, hopefully, with police, because we do have this like age of kid that is really getting into this type of equipment. And if they're doing it safely, it's something where the officers can, kind of enthuse about it with them, talk to them about it. We've already seen some of that happening this past fall, and we see that there could be a real positive to this. And so that's just kind of a quick broad brush overview of our law, and I'm happy to answer any questions later on. And Melinda, I kept within my time. First.
Thank you, Mayor. This is fantastic. I know as a mom and an older sister to a number of siblings who are not yet old enough to have fully developed prefrontal cortexes, this buying guide is really useful. And, no kid or anyone wants to be told that they can't use the new fun devices to get around, and they all want to, have this freedom. And this, I think, is going to be really helpful for not only folks in Bexley, but I'm sure I'll take a look at it and gently suggest to my siblings devices that might make sense to them.
Real quick, Linda, I forgot to. There was a mention of a speed limit on early on in the presentation. We do actually have an interesting provision in ours where bikes are legal on sidewalks in Bexley, normal bikes throughout the city. It sounds like Dublin has that as well. We don't think that e-bikes belong on sidewalks, and this is not bike paths. This is specifically sidewalks. And so in general, e-bikes are not allowed on sidewalks except for on our really busy streets, where especially we're thinking about our youth on Main Street and Broad. And so we are allowing them on those sidewalks. There is a limit if they're around pedestrians and in general, just to keep that speed down, because those would be more busy streets for pedestrians in general. So that's a very unique thing to our code, and it's specific to like 4 different stretches of sidewalks in the city.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And here on the screen, you guys all can access this QR code for a future event. So check this out while you're also thinking about questions that you might have for the panelists. This is our Central Ohio Greenways Forum that will also include what we're calling a Bloom training, Building Landscapes of Opportunity and Mitigation. And if you really liked hearing from Mayor Kessler, he is also a panelist at this event. So definitely join us in February for this event. It will include lunch and some networking opportunities. So just wanted to give that a shout out. I know we have some questions that have popped up in the chat, so I'll do my best to get through them. But if you're a speaker and you see a question that has been specifically addressed to you and you can answer it in the chat, go for it. Yeah, I'll start off with the question related to speeds. Christian or anyone from City of Columbus, where did the question go? I had it pulled up. They're asking when restrictions on mobility devices might be removed for ages 16 plus.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. That was one of the Bike Plus midterm actions, was to address some of those code changes, specifically on age restrictions and a couple others within the city code. So that's one of the many code changes that we're working on actively with council at the moment. As Christian mentioned, we're primarily focused on building out a physical infrastructure that anyone can use, but knowing that some of those code changes in the background are something that we can work on, but we have been more focused on the physical infrastructure right up front.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. One of the other questions that David put into the chat, specifically for Dublin, but I'll broaden it for everyone else, was related to the width of our trails and multi-use paths. Has anyone been thinking about width of our trails or multi-use paths to better accommodate this new, I think, category of mobility device? I know that Rails to Trails has their kind of concept of trail with trail to accommodate slower moving trail users with the faster moving trail users. So just wanted to throw it out there for anyone to share what they're thinking about.
Melinda, I just mentioned that in our most recent community plan update, we updated the standard width to 11 feet for shared use path in Dublin and 6 feet for all sidewalks, regardless if it's commercial or residential. So I think that's a step in the right direction because it sets the expectation for development review and some other projects that may be coming from the city. And then our signature trail is going to be at least 15 feet wide, but that's its own little animal.
Yeah, with that signature trail, JM, are you guys starting to think about how you'll differentiate space for different types of trail users?
Yeah, what we're envisioning is a shared use path and then a sidewalk running parallel to that. So slower traffic, or you can have, I say slower, but maybe just more comfort could be on one side, and the other side could be for maybe more faster traffic, if you want to say that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think one of the issues that we're clearly seeing is that we're not quite sure where these devices belong. Put yourself in kind of an unsafe situation if you're using them on roadways, and you might be putting other pedestrians or slower moving people in an unsafe situation if you're on trails or on sidewalks. Anyone else want to share? All right, Trisha has a question for Mayor Kessler. E-bikes and e-scooters on Main will be an issue. Some cities are restricting business districts. Is that something you guys considered?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was reading about Westerville and having restrictions in business districts. We took a different approach, which was council led. I have to admit, this was a council initiative in terms of the sidewalks and the e-bikes. But I think the concern was that as we were specifically addressing e-bike use by youth, and we don't have enough right of way currently to accommodate a dedicated bike lane on, for example, Main Street. We wanted to allow for safe cycling in that area by our youth. I know immediately it'll be like, it's not safe cycling. There's driveways and cars and conflicts, but just bear with me. And so that's where we came up with this concept that while some codes would say you can use e-bikes in some of those sections without activating the motor, that just seemed like a really hard thing to enforce or know. And so we focused more on driver behavior or rider behavior in terms of like, yes, you can use these e-bikes on the sidewalk, but keep the speed calm in those areas and keep it especially around pedestrians.
Trisha, does that answer your question? I saw your hand kind of pop up.
Yeah, I see why you did that way, but and I like that you have the 5-mile speed limit if there's pedestrians around, but I'm just concerned about the conflicts that will be, and perhaps because there's so many side streets in Bexley that, maybe could have required walking on the business districts if, come down the side street to wherever you're going and then walk the section to wherever you're headed. Just a suggestion.
Oh, I totally understand that. And again, that was a council member led change. I will say we do get complaints about normal cyclists on our sidewalks in the Main Street district, and some of the really fast behavior that a non-powered cyclist in the sidewalk can exhibit. And so I think it can be a concern in general. We have not to date had safety issues I'm aware of associated with it, but I totally understand the complexity of all the users of that very narrow sidewalk.
JM, just a quick question for you. It seems like everyone was really excited about your comparison chart.
Yes.
Is it okay if Morgan goes ahead and puts a copy of that in the chat?
Yes, it is. Since we already went to council a week ago, it's all public knowledge now.
All right, fantastic. And then here's a kind of specific question for you, Kate. Tandem e-bikes are 1,000 watts. Is there any thought of how tandem bikes might fit into the legislation? Maybe that's a new one.
I don't know. I don't know that I can speak to kind of the statewide legislative process, but that's news to me. I be curious if that means those bikes could go faster than, I don't know, than what would be reasonably defined as an e-bike. Trisha, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have a friend that's got tandem e-bikes that are 1,000, but he says, if he runs them at the lower power level, they don't exert that much power, however that works. So it's possible maybe, I mean, we could look into whether, cannot be operated at higher than that or something, but, and I don't know. That's only in the definition about the 750 watts. So, if you're on the road and you want to go faster, there's no restriction on how fast it can go. It's only how much power the motor can give you. So maybe we could just look into how we might revise that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Trisha. I have a question for any of the panelists related to the count equipment that I mentioned before. Are you guys thinking about ways that you can gather speed related information? I know that every couple of weeks or every week I get a call from somebody that's like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of fast moving bikes on our trails. What can we do about it? So just curious what you guys think.
Melinda, we did have, thankfully, Kate Hartley gave us some funds to be able to build out a bike count program, and we are going to be including speeds as a part of that count collection. So we'll be monitoring those as we go along. All of the counts that we have so far, including your own Morpsey counts, don't yet have those speed counts, but we're hoping to build that into the collection that we're doing over the next couple of years.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I heard that you guys were purchasing some equipment, so it's good to hear that you're including the speed equipment as well. For anyone that doesn't know, Morpsey has a regional dashboard for all EcoCount equipment. So if your community purchases one of those EcoCounters, we can include that in our regional dashboard and really get a better picture of trail count data and now speed data if you buy one of those newer devices. So thanks, Brian. Do we have any other questions here? Have any of the panelists had specific safety incidents or crashes related to e-bikes and shared micromobility? How did they manage outrage or political pressure to ban these devices?
Definitely, but I want to hear Mayor Benz first.
We've had a couple incidents in the past year or two, specifically involving youth and e-scooters, in terms of accidents. And then with bikes, it's been a lot. There's been a lot more conversation about e-bikes and behavior. I don't know of accidents, but I can point to. There's just been a surplus of like bikes ripping through playgrounds and certain types of behavior that you just don't see with a normal unassisted bike. But yeah, so some pretty bad accidents with e-scooters. I wouldn't say that there's been public outrage. It's caused me and leadership in the city, greater concern as we've looked at the character of the accidents and how they've occurred and the type of behavior that led to them. Brian?
Just to clarify and cleanse my own conscience, I am an e-bike owner and Bexley resident. It was not me ripping through the park that Mayor Ben is mentioning. We have had quite a bit of pushback on multiple different fronts. I mean, even Ms. Kovacs on the call has pointed us to a couple examples of people using e-scooters on shared use paths in a legal manner that were involved in a crash. But in that instance, there were police officers that then cited the scooter rider, which is not correct. The driver should have been cited. So we've actually done some training as a part of that with our CPD to get some better clarity. It is not quite as easy to have clarity across all forms of communication in the city of Columbus as it might be in a Worthington or a Bexley or a Dublin. So we have some different scale issues that we have a little bit of trouble with. We've had a lot of back and forth with a bunch of our downtown groups on managing no ride zones or others with specifically CPD and Downtown Columbus Inc. Anytime a crime happens after midnight, they instantly ask us if we can ban scooter activity. which is just wild because we wouldn't ban cars if something else happened. So it's kind of an easy scapegoat at times that is pointed towards our scooter and bike share activity. But those are some of the initial things that we've had to do. I think we've had a lot of support from council and electeds about what these shared micromobility options give our community. So we haven't had a lot of no or banning them entirely. And thankfully, we've done a lot of work, mainly led by Christian, to ensure that these devices can still be operated within our city.
Thanks, Brian. And thanks everyone for your questions. I'm sorry that we didn't have time to get to all of them. This can be the start of this conversation that we have regionally. So if you guys want to continue thinking about this and talking about this together, let me know, and I can start thinking about ways that we can all kind of network and get together to continue to share with each other what we're doing to keep us all safe and having fun on e-bikes and e-scooters. With that, I think we're right here at time. Thank you all for joining, and hopefully I'll see most of you around soon.
Nice job, everybody. Very educational. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.